5:34. Good evening, everyone. Today is July 10th, and it is 5:34. I would like to call to order the special call meeting of the Central Health Board of Managers. Okay. Agenda item number 1, discuss and take appropriate action on an agreement between Central Health and the 2033 LP for the lease of real property located on the Central Health downtown campus. Stephen, we gotta make this as quickly as we can, otherwise we're going to start losing quorum.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you. I guess I'm to blame for this meeting, so apologies for that, but we've actually had good progress in the last 2 weeks. So if we can pull up there we go. Thank you. This is a document that we showed this morning to Travis County Commissioners Court, and this is a high-level overview of what I'll call the immediate revenue to Central Health. And from here, we can go into some additional detail as you request. The yellow lines are the base rent. Well, the yellow lines right now are guaranteed payments to Central Health. So in Block 164, day one revenue is $610,000. Now it's commencement day one, $110,000. Block 167, it's $815,000 for a total of 1.4 million. There's also, so do I, but we didn't get that, sorry. There's also user premiums, and we'll come back to these a little bit, but for Block 164, it's now 1.35 million. 2 weeks ago, this value was at 1.3 million. We've basically agreed to, and also the base rent on 164 2 weeks ago was 535,000 as well, so we've made some gains in the last 2 week period. That was one of the factors that were holding up the final agreement. Block 164 has agreed to make 3 years of year one rent prepaid. So that's the additional prepaid amount rent of 1.220 million. So in 2019 for Block 164, probably the first quarter of 2019, they'll pay us almost $3.2 million. In Block 167, the same time frame, we will be guaranteed $815,000, so almost $4 million to 3.995 in the lower right-hand corner. Now there are decisions to be made by Central Health. Right now we've preserved ultimate flexibility, or as much flexibility as we can for the entire site. That includes looking at repurposing the tower. We're running multiple scenarios on that. Full candor, I don't know if anything is actually going to turn into something economically viable, but we have a period from now till the end of the calendar year to look at different options. If Central Health decides not to repurpose the tower, then a portion of the footprint under the tower, approximately 30 additional feet, extending south from Block 164, will be added to the land area, and then the rent will change for the original tower election on 167 to $920,000. If we elect not to repurpose the tower, then we can also request, and 2033 has agreed, basically we'll have to prepay additional rent to fund demolition costs for us. So that's the next shaded, sort of the brown line, the original tower election of approximately 2.5 million. That is an estimate. We actually hope that amount will go down because we're looking to combine multiple facilities to get economy of scale and demolition, but that amount could go up as well. But they will fund demolition to take down the tower component. So depending upon Central Health's election, for Block 167, we will either get $815,000 of revenue, or we might get $3.4 million of revenue. So combined with potential prepayments, demolition, escrow, and funding, Central Health can get $6.6 million in the first year. The second table is the net present value calculations. And going down to, the standard lease is basically simple payments on an annual basis. And we do get lump sum payment for the full year's rent at the start of each lease term. So it's better. The typical lease would get monthly payments, so we're seeing all of the revenue up front. That results on a 5-year basis of $8.08 million. And over 99 years, they all come out to about $56 million. The prepayment option is basically just adding the prepayments from Block 164. And then the original tower election models all of the costs extended over 99 years for a combination of 164 and 167. But they all come out $56 million plus. Now these are conservative. We do have a reset potential on a 15-year basis. Right now, I've modeled that only at 2%. If market conditions are better, then we could be looking at a 10% increase on a reset basis, but I'm being very conservative. We've also used a 5% discount rate. That is actually higher than we potentially should, because if we had to borrow money to issue municipal bonds or certificates of obligation to, say, pay for demolition or these other costs, our cost of capital, our borrowing cost is probably 4 to 4.5% with placement fees. So that would actually increase the net present value to probably $60 million or more. So these are conservative but very safe numbers. Those are the highlights, to be honest. I'll be glad to go into salient business terms. Again, this is a 99-year term ground lease for the 2 parcels. This is what I'd call a triple net plus lease. A triple net lease in commercial real estate is where the tenant takes on all operating and maintenance expenses, and probably including minor capital improvement expenses, but the landlord or the building owner still remains responsible for the structural system, site materials, and water integrity. Here, everything is transferred to the 2033 fund and or UT, so they are responsible for everything. Central Health will have 0 cost obligations. Now, we do have a provision in the ground lease that when additional parcels of the site of downtown campus are developed, and we look at shared maintenance or park facilities or landscaping, then we do have a provision to enter into a common area assessment agreement, and that would be based on defined square footages for the land area for each entity. Teton currently rents Block 168, which is the parking garage, and the CEC, so they have absolute responsibility for maintenance and preservation of those. Central Health, as the landlord, though, does have responsibility, for example, for the structural issues, and if there was a roof leak in the CEC. That's the difference between a triple net lease and what I'm calling the triple net plus lease for the 2033 agreement. When 164 is developed, if we do something on 165, when 167 gets developed and other portions of it, all of that can be averaged, and then a common area assessment for shared security perhaps or maintenance would be distributed across all entities. That'll be built into any subsequent agreement that we might do with other developers. Again, we have annual rent adjustments of 2% a year. That doesn't sound like a huge amount, but it's twice what Travis County is getting on, actually better than twice what Travis County is getting on 308 Guadalupe Street. They're getting 5% every 5 years, so we're getting 2% compounded. And a question from this gentleman earlier, he didn't quite understand that, but even though it's only 2%, the effects of compounding that over 99 years is actually huge. It gives us over 7 times the value of the money on day one. So it's actually, even though it seems trivial, it actually contributes very significantly. The user premium is something unique to this. These are one-off costs. We argued over that extensively. We've simplified the calculation of the user premiums. And this, if I go to the green shading on this, which isn't real clear, but on Block 164, we are still working with the City of Austin to vacate the existing Red River. A portion of that land will probably be added to Block 164. The revised user premium of $1.35 million accounts for that. That is based on the fully entitled, fully prepared site complete for 164. Finally, that simply takes away an argument in the future. We have been going back and forth. I think if you recall in an executive session, I kept telling we're spending a lot of time on defining things and user development fees. We've taken that away and simplified it. So 135, the 1.35 million amount accounts for that. And on Block 167, we have a tiered payment schedule. So from years 2019 to 2024, if they start new development, Central Health is guaranteed at least $2.65 million. If they wait an additional 5 years, so 2025, and that's when they start construction or development, we are guaranteed at least $3.5 million. And then the next 5-year increment from years 2030 and beyond, we're guaranteed at least $4.43 million. Each of those are escalated on a 2% basis. So in year 2025, we guaranteed a minimum of $3.5 million, but if they did it in 2027, it would be escalated at 2% compounded for each of those periods. This is also tied somewhat uniquely to building size. This defines a minimum building size of just over 610,000 square feet. Should they decide to build 1 million square feet, then these formulas kick in and we get a premium based on the building size. And that sounds a little conceited, but that's quite unique for a ground lease because they are just getting, typically we're leasing the ground and the owner has zero participation in the value of the building size. The agreement now provides some flexibility and potential greater revenue for Central Health in future years. Again, these are one-off payments. If they build a building on 164 and they tear it down 30 years from now and build something new, Central Health will not participate in that other than a possible reset value at that point in time. And the reappraised value would pick up the added cost, and then that will continue to be escalated on a 2% basis, but we will not get a user premium over the 99-year cycle. And over 99 years, buildings could be repurposed multiple times. The University of Texas universities, like to sort of develop for a 100-year life. Frequently, they use many buildings, and many government buildings have lasted 100 years, and they probably shouldn't. But if they redevelop it several times, we will unfortunately not participate in that. But again, the change in value would be picked up in the reset basis, which is on a 15-year basis through the appraisals. We do have Exhibit D in the agreement, and I won't go into the details, but that incorporates many of the provisions from the master plan. And they're not definitive. We have not said do A, B, and C, but they are guidance documents as provided in the master plan. So they're open space and pedestrian-friendly standards. Builder is absolute, and that's required. Active ground floor retail type capabilities, public spaces. Basically, the provisions from the master plan are incorporated into this agreement. And we have language in this agreement that they are to be coordinated and not with University of Texas requirements and not subservient to that. So it gives us a little bit of flex. If UT, for whatever reason, should default and not make payment, they have sovereign immunity. So yes, we can sue them, but they can just waive sovereign immunity and it doesn't really go anywhere, but we have termination rights. We really don't think that UT is going to walk away from this. They are, again, they cannot guarantee payments directly, but through the overall lease structure and the subleases that are planned between 2033 and UT, it's sort of the next best thing to guaranteeing payments. If they are late, I'd hate to say I never wanted late payments, but if they're more than 5 days late with the $1.4 million of annual rent, they owe us a 2.5% penalty plus 1% interest from the day of calculation. So we have very strong provisions and protections in there should that happen. With that, I will be glad to go into more detail, but I think in prior meetings we've tried to touch on all of this. I'm not continue to talk, but I might be better to respond to questions, so I'm open to your suggestions and your needs.
Mr. Giesman?
It's time.
Would you like to bring Mr. Gossman in?
Actually, probably visit with the board members first, and then, but just to point out, Mr. Gottesman is in the audience today. But I think first is to open it up to board member questions relative to what Stephen just presented.
Board Member Daniel.
I don't have any questions, but I did want to just thank you for all of the work that you've done. We've been on a long journey as we've worked on this property, and I know there's still a lot more to do, but I think this agreement that you've hammered out is one that benefits the district and goes to one of our core priorities for this property, which is generating revenue for meeting the needs of our population. So I just want to thank you. I know that we've had some good folks to negotiate with, but they're tough negotiators, so I know that you did a good job. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. This was a collective effort. All parties wanted to reach a fair agreement and beneficial agreement for Central Health. So we had certain discussions and emails and communications at different times that were not necessarily friendly, but the overall intent was, I mean, that there was a spirit of cooperation here to be fair to Central Health, and I do believe this is a good agreement for Central Health.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Aiken?
I would like to echo what Manager Daniels has said, and thank you for this. I can't imagine, I know it has not been easy, and I think you have come up with something that really will benefit our population. I will be abstaining from the vote tonight because of my employment at University of Texas at Austin, so I want to avoid apparent conflict of interest, but I want to thank you, and I want to state that I believe this is a positive and good thing for the people that we're trying to serve, so thank you.
Board Member Valdez.
I do have some questions. I didn't know if they were specific to.
We'll do that in executive session.
Okay.
Anything else?
Aside from thank you, I personally would have liked to have seen more occur with the master plan, but it didn't. And so this is what we're dealing with today, and I appreciate any and all persons and all entities that are actually working to make sure that we have some revenue coming in as opposed to section of land that needs to be developed, and we need to make money off of it so that we can provide direct services to our statutory population.
If I may, Cynthia, the questions that you gave me, questions 6, 7, and 8, we'll have to ask out in open session.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and ask them.
Go ahead.
That's okay. So I guess Mr. Lamb and Mike, what effect, if any, will the lease income have on Central Health's budget and the tax rate that it levies? How much of our Central Health property taxes are going to go down as a result of the lease?
You want to bring Jeff up?
I don't think, this is independent, this decision and any forthcoming revenue and any expenditures related around the Brackenridge campus redevelopment, I think are independent of any tax rate discussion, because this provides us with additional revenue. If anything, a lot of it depends on the subsequent budgets that are adopted going forward, but this may take some upward pressure off of the tax rate. But when you look at the population growth and the growth of families that are at or below 200% of the federal poverty level, that alone is going to continue to drive up medical costs, which is has a bigger impact on the tax rate. But again, I would see this as providing some much needed non-tax revenue that would, for $1 million for a year, we may need 4.5%, 5% above effective. But if we did not have this revenue, we may need 5.5% to 6% above effective.
Okay, so.
I'm sorry,
Go
I
ahead,
just wanted to
please.
weigh in on this question because I think, as you know, the budget and the tax rate comes before the board, and while we ask the staff to help us model different scenarios, we're the ones that make that determination. I think the numbers that Stephen presented are sort of what they are. Some is a smaller amount for ongoing revenue, which, as Mike talked about, could offset the need for potential additional tax revenue. But some of the one-time funds that we are hoping to get up front, I think could help us with some of the capital expenses that we may encounter. So it's, ongoing revenue is important, but one-time money is useful as well. If we wanted to, we've talked about a number of initiatives on the Eastern Crescent, and those funds, to the extent that we're able to realize them, will help with some of those initiatives, and maybe even some of the remediation and work on the Brackenridge property. So, that's kind of how I see it.
I understand that completely. My concern continues to be the provision of direct services to our statutory population. And when we are continuing to fund initiatives and other things that may not necessarily fund direct services, then all dollars are important. And
I guess I thought you were asking about the revenue from this deal that
whether
we're
or
talking
not it was
about.
going to impact our budget at all.
Right, and and we're the ones that,
Non-tax
you know this,
That's right.
we're the ones that determine the budget. We determine the expenditures, and we base that on revenue, and so these numbers are what they are. And to the extent they make one-time or ongoing revenue available, that's, as Mike pointed out, less money that we have to pull in through tax revenue.
I guess the question to me is, are we paying any taxes on the property? And if we're paying any taxes on the property, how much is that? Are we paying taxes on the?
It's Zone
property?
P, and.
It's
yeah.
public, so it's free and clear. Right.
We do not pay taxes on it, and if there are any, for this deal, if there are any taxes imposed they're paid by 2033. Now, if UT is the occupant, since they're a state agency,
And
then
they're
that'll probably be tax
non-taxing.
exempt.
That's
But
right.
if they lease space to commercial entities, then the revenue from the commercial entities would be taxable.
Okay, that's-
Central Health has zero tax obligation for this.
I guess what I'm looking at is if, when Seton vacated our property, we had about $34 million loss. So that's something that did impact our budget, and because we had that loss. And so-
Well, but so here's, I think this is interesting, this question about this lost lease payment, this $30 million that's lost. And I think, can I finish my thought? So I think that there is a segment of maybe our board and the population who ties that $30 million to this piece of property. And in my mind, the $30 million was tied to a relationship that we have with Seton. And so Seton now has moved across the street. They spent Ascension, I think, spent $325 million to build a hospital that we did, a state-of-the-art facility that taxpayers didn't have to spend money on. So that's part of that $30 million a year. That's money, those are expenditures that we never had to make, so that's savings. So whether Seton wrote us a check or we had cost avoidance, I mean, to me, that all fits into the picture. The other thing is Seton operates that hospital. So if you think about Harris County Hospital District, Bexar County, Tarrant, Dallas, all those other areas that own and operate their hospital, I mean, it's expensive to run a state-of-the-art healthcare facility. That's money we're not spending that our taxpayers aren't having to spend money on. So that goes into that $30 million question too. That's cost avoidance that we don't have. And then now the way our deal is structured, Seton covers the cost of healthcare for inpatient hospitalization. So again, that's revenue that this is why we get to say we have the lowest tax rate of any of these larger districts, because our agreement with Seton shifts that risk and cost to them. So while we don't get a $30 million check from them, the cost of what they are covering grows every year. As the cost of healthcare grows, as technology increases, maintaining the hospital becomes more expensive, and that delta grows. What they cover grows in terms of what value it brings, and that's money that we're not having to spend.
So that population that Seton is providing services to, are you talking about our MAP population?
Remember, we're talking about the 2033 LP lease. I understand how we got here, but we have to bring it back to the lease.
Okay, so with respect to the lease, since the door had been opened towards the population that Seton's providing services to, and if Seton is providing services to our MAP population, that population was limited. It was capped.
So if we went back to the days when Central Health owned, like when the city owned and operated Brackenridge, I mean, this history, they were drowning, they were losing money, and hospitals are very costly, especially on a population that that's largely uninsured. And when you have that bifurcated system where you've got a poor people hospital versus a system where it's the same hospital that you go to, I go to, the uninsured people go to, it's a better healthcare system. And in our case, we're again not covering those costs.
Okay. I want to ask question number 7. Question number 7, was there a net present value analysis performed by for a sales versus a lease? And if so, if not, why not?
We performed an early analysis on, yes, is a simple answer. We did not do it seriously because prior board guidance was that we wanted to look at this asset as a long-term generator of revenue for Central Health. A fee simple sale of any block or parcel of this is sort of a one-off lump sum of cash. Mm-hmm. We spent more time, I'm actually still modeling block 168 in terms of a potential means to capture income. Is a garage lease. If Red River is vacated and a portion of that land is added to that, then that site becomes much more viable as a one-off sale and higher value than say 164 or 167.
Okay, so so basically you're telling me, yes, that was done.
It was done. I did not, not flat out, did not spend a lot of time on it because I thought, at least understood that the direction was that we were looking at trying to do this as a long-term.
Lease
revenue.
as opposed to a sale.
Yes.
And with the result of if we had, I'm just hypothetical, if we had chosen to sell the property, that block or both blocks or one of the two, if we had sold that property, then do we have an idea as to how much money we might have made off per block?
I will have to get back to you. I don't
I'm just
want-
curious.
No, I will be glad to get back to you. I do not want to quote something incorrect right now, but I can easily get that.
Okay. And then,
I may, on that one, but keep in mind with just the action on these two blocks, a
167.
sale of any other piece of this campus is still an opportunity for the board to consider. It is not off the table in any way,
Okay.
shape, or form. And so you get the best of both worlds by having a long-term generator of income, especially with those kind of net present value indicators. But should the board decide to sell the remainder or even some portions of the remaining BRAC campus, then you get the benefit of that infusion, that one-time infusion.
And that all was,
That could certainly be an option, too.
and that was all basically allowed for in the original RFQ or RFP, that we would have been able to either do a master development, or we could have been, I could have considered something block by block, or,
They could have submitted something that contemplated an outright purchase
Yes.
if they wanted to.
okay. And so then, Mr. Gottesman had stated that he had no involvement or was not benefiting from the deal. But would he be a partner or participant in any deals, current and future, that would include Seton and UT with Central Health? I'm just asking the question.
I don't think we're
That's 8.
posted for that, are we? Council?
That's,
I think what you're trying to ask is, what is the financial benefit to Mr. Gottesman entering into this deal?
yes.
And if you want
And future.
Mr. Gottesman to address that question, you'll have to
It
ask
does.
the board chair if it's okay for him to speak to this issue.
At this moment, because we have 30 minutes left before we lose quorum, I'm going to decline that. Mr. Geeson?
I was just motioning to council to say that's, I'm sorry, I was letting you know that council was about to opine on the matter.
And if you would, Mr. Gossman, to talk, we'll be happy to, but we really got to keep it short. I don't want to lose my quorum.
Can I ask a parliament
think-
question?
What do you think? What do you think, Mike? I need your response first before I move on. Do you think we need to answer, Cynthia?
I think
Can I ask a
my
per-
personal opinion is, I think it is a relatively short answer. And I think that it's a legitimate question, it's an open question, and so given that he's
Okay.
got his presence here.
Let me go with Katrina
While he
first.
comes up, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So we're losing a quorum at 6:30. So even though Dr. Aiken is abstaining, we need her here in order to
A quorum.
have the vote. So we don't need 5 people voting, but we need 5 people
To be present.
present in order to take the vote. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we must vote before 6:30. Okay.
Right.
I just want to be clear on that.
Otherwise, we'll
Thanks.
lose quorum.
Thank you, Katrina.
Mr. Gossman, thank you so much for coming, and again, like I told you outside, I'm so thankful for you doing this.
Pleasure.
I'll let you address Ms. Valdez.
So is the question whether I have any other financial interest with UT
Yes,
or
sir, current or
Seton?
future?
No.
You and your family.
I mean,
You and your family members.
no.
Well, that's a very, thank you for your response.
Even briefer than I thought.
What do you expound?
Can I have a follow-up question? Sure. And also, Ms. Valdez, to fully answer your question that you raised earlier on the master plan, the master plan is still very much in play. And the guiding principles of mission, stewardship, and partnership still guide what we do here. And I think when we come back to the board, as well as going back out for community conversations, having that master plan front and center is going to be one of our tools that we use for this, because the board spent a lot of time and effort in this. This predates mine and Stephen's arrival, but it's a great guidance document, and so we should use it. The second point and last point is, even though at this particular juncture, we're not using a single preferred master developer for all 14 acres, that does not mean that ultimately what becomes of this development won't be consistent with the master plan as it was envisioned.
Right.
And even then with the remaining blocks, like I say, you can still, the board may decide, hey, we want to go with a single developer for the remaining blocks. You can still do that, in which case the master plan would still apply there. So I think it's not, it hasn't been abandoned.
I think what was most important to me all along has been the fact that we needed to generate money to help Central Health complete its mission.
Yes, ma'am.
And to achieve its goals as stated in the original development of the master plan and in us fulfilling our mission. So I'm still.
And it's a
I think
daily
this gets us
recital.
there.
Yeah, and
Daily recital at the staff level.
thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Brown?
If I may also expand on the master plan, and the document I just handed out, I'm sorry, it had little check marks to track our compliance of this agreement with the 2033, but they got cut off, so my apologies for that. These are the provisions quoted in the master plan. Block 164 and 167 are almost defined as phase one in the master plan, so this is very similar. And the point of this document was to show that the parallels between what this is doing as a start of following in compliance with the master plan. There's some elements in the master plan that are, you can't really guarantee, for example, ensuring health equity, well, the
That's right.
2033 lease, Kennelly, I don't think can guarantee that, but yes, it's an indirect component of this. We don't know if there will be a public market. Kennelly, as a public market, as a standalone entity, investment of capital, even Project for Public Spaces that were the consultants to promote a public market said that we will never recover the capital. So again, those are not my decisions, but we will bring evaluations to that. Now, we have met with HEB, we've met with Whole Foods and the real estate group. Under the right conditions, they would love to be on this site. It's not limited to the site. They have their own market conditions, and it needs to be a bigger radius and bigger draw. But they would potentially, I know HEB has commented, they'd love to have an extension of their cafes and outdoor type market. So there are many elements that may show up, but this is really just the start for us. So it's not to demean the master plan, but that was a strong guidance document, but we just
Mr. Lamb.
don't know what's going to get there yet.
I'm sorry, I got 25 minutes. Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I'd like to first concur with my colleagues and thank you for the great work you've done in getting us here to this point. I don't have any questions. I do want to sort of piggyback a little bit off of what Cynthia said, in the sense that my concern is that the revenue that is generated, that we make sure that we are able to address some of those challenges, some of those strategies that we put forth in our plan, particularly some of the new initiatives we're talking about. And so I'm going to be committed to making sure that happens. We don't know how much we'll get from this. We don't know what the economy will look like in the next 20 years. So to be able to get started early, to be able to generate some of those and begin to, and that's why I want to emphasize, begin those investments is important to me. And so I would be, I think this is an opportunity to do that, because I think our citizenry, Cynthia, is looking for some product relatively soon. The longer we delay it, the less they're going to be confident that we're able to address it. Having said all of that, I have a challenge, like Abigail had indicated, that I may not be able to vote on this one because I still have a sort of a loose affiliation with UT. So that may be problematic in terms of vote. I'll probably need to defer to council to see whether I don't have a contract with them, but I do have an affiliation. So the question of if that would be inappropriate, then I will have to abstain on the vote.
So I think this is an apparent conflict of interest, not a true legal conflict of interest. And we leave it up to your discretion to decide whether you would like to vote on this matter or not. There won't be a legal conflict if you vote on this.
There's no legal.
Not even including the duality.
There is a potential duality of interest, but again, remember our policy says that the first decision is made by the individual board of manager and that they have to seek out legal counsel 72 hours before the meeting.
Can I weigh in on this? This is just I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is just a conversation that we've had extensively over the years as big and growing as Austin is, it's a relatively small community, especially when you get into the microcosm of healthcare and the university. And so, I mean, this comes up all the time with board members. We've got, as you point out, legal conflicts of interest, but I think even your conflict of interest is not a legal one. But some of the board members have chosen to abstain just in an abundance of caution to avoid the appearance. But I think that's, like you said, really at the discretion. And this has been something that various board members have struggled with for as long as I've been on the board, including myself. I mean, there were times where I've abstained from things not having a legal conflict, but just, so, I mean, if your affiliation is not,
Well, there is
I
no
mean, so
actual,
Abigail's obviously employed by the university.
mine is not, there's not even a fiduciary responsibility,
Yeah,
it's just a
right.
on-call type of arrangement.
Right.
But for the appearance, it's the appearance, I don't want us to find ourselves on the road saying, well, a board member who did have an appearance.
I guess what I would say is, that at times I think we have been overly sensitive on that topic. That's my own personal opinion, but.
Anyone else? Evan? Steven?
If I can go back to your question on net present value, whether we sell the property, I will get back to you with what I calculated. We have the right to sell these parcels at any time. So we have ultimate flexibility. If Central Health needed a cash influx, we could sell one or both or all of the parcels. We could also sell the lease revenue. That's a bit of a challenge because any commercial developer entity would want to take it at a discounted value, so we would be getting less. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. With that, I think we're going to take the rest of your questions in executive session. I'm going to go ahead and call for executive session now. We're going to take 10 minutes. That's all we're going to do because we got to get out of here.
You have to,
I don't have to get out of here, but I know my board members. Yes.
do you read the announcement
Okay.
about the
All
closed
right.
session?
It is, looks like 6:11. I announce the board is convening an executive session to discuss agenda item 1 under section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney, and under section 551.072 of the Texas Government Code, deliberation regarding real property. Okay. is, looks like 6:22, and the board will reconvene in open session. This is about agenda item 1, discuss and take appropriate action on an agreement between Central Health and the 2033 LP for the lease of real property included on the Central Health downtown campus. With that, the only thing I have to add is, and I'll make my words short, remember, this is about patience. This is going to allow us to continue raising funds to the funds we need to pay for the future of our patients. Daniel, would you like to make a motion?
The execution of the ground lease agreement between Central Health and the 2033 LP.
Second.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Board Member Daniel, a second by Board Member Valadez. All in favor say aye. I'd like a hand count on this one.
All three of us.
The three of us, okay. All against say no. Anyone abstaining, just hand. I'll show that Mr. Jones and Dr. Akins are going to abstain, and Valadez, myself, and Daniel voted for yes.
I know we just voted on this. I just want to remind us that while there are 5 of us here, 3 of us voted, a majority of the substance of this has come before the board several times. We've been discussing it all along the way. I appreciate you keeping us abreast, but even members who aren't present here today have been up to speed on the progress on this. Thank you for that.
And with that, I too want to thank you, Stephen, and Mike, and all our executive management team for the hard work you guys did for this. Sandy, thank you for your hard work. I know you're back there helping with the university, but helping us take care of our patients, like I told you outside, is the most important thing you could have done for us. Making sure we take care of those most vulnerable, and you know who they are, because I told you already who they are. They're the ones that need us the most. And without you and Stephen working this thing, we couldn't have done it. With that, it is 6:19. I thank you for the urgency of this meeting and getting this meeting done. With that, we have item 2. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's correct. Item 2 is confirm the next regular board meeting date, time, and location. The next Central Health Board of Managers meeting is scheduled for July 25th, 2018, at 5:30 p.m. at Central Health Administrative Offices, 1111 East Southside Chavez Street, Austin, Texas, 78702. With that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second? So, all in favor say aye. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you.
You should all go buy Stephen a drink.
Thank you for